Hi everyone. Before we start this series, I just wanted to quickly talk about how important this book is to me. This is an old copy I have. You'll see it says Aurelius there. I took this with me when I went to Europe. I stood in the Colosseum in Pompeii and read it. I went and saw the statue of Marcus Aurelius in Rome. This book is probably one of the top 5 books that have influenced my adulthood. It really helped me deal with issues particularly around anxiety and leadership, both as a father and a husband, and then as well, I guess, in the workplace and elsewhere. So I deeply love this book. I'm very happy to read it with the guys. And I really hope that anyone who watches this gets some value out of how we talk about it. And if you don't, well, please get a copy and read it, because there's so much value in here, particularly at the moment with the world and how uncertain things are. And there's so many people saying what, good masculinity looks like. And some people have ideas that that's arrogance or being strong no matter what, or different reasons. But this book really shows the right path, I think, to how to have strength and humility and gentleness and courage and all the Stoic virtues that have been incorporated into the Christian faith anyway. So I hope you enjoyed this series that we do. And yeah, I can't praise this book high enough, and I hope that it helps you like it helped me. Thanks.
And welcome to the Republic of Middle-Aged Men. Woo! I'm keeping my normal tradition of wearing a different hat. It's not really a hat, it's a helmet. What do you guys think?
We are the Knights of Knee.
Knee. I can see on the screen. I can barely see.
Has it still got the tag on it?
It does. I haven't taken the tag or the straps off yet. Oh, there we go.
I mean, the good thing, Tim, is that, if you can't find the colander in the kitchen, you do now have a backup too.
It does. It's got all these little holes here for the colander. For those listening on audio, you're probably confused. I'm wearing a Crusader helmet. There's no other simple way to say that. I'm going to take it off now because it sounds like I'm talking inside a tin can, because I am.
Yeah.
So those who've been watching the show for quite some time know that every single episode I wear a different hat. And I'm kind of running out of hats, so I'm having to go to all the different props and other toys that I have around here. I reckon I've only got maybe 1 or 2 left. I'm going to have to go hat shopping.
That's so funny.
Anyway, you guys never wear hats, so that's nothing new. But you always have a drink, so I'm going to start with what I'm drinking. I am drinking, my dear friend at work got me this bottle of Tendue Rum, spelled R-H-U-M, dark rum, and it's from the Philippines, and it says on the bottle that it is 80 proof, which I believe is flammable, and there's 1 litre of it, so I'm very, very thankful for that. I'm about to sip it now, live on air, first time without any Coke or anything in it.
Yeah.
Do not expose me to any naked flames in the next 10 minutes.
If you run out of petrol, you could, top the car up, mate. Breathe in the tank.
It's probably is the same price as petrol, to be honest. Anyway, and that's not a criticism of the drink, it's just saying how expensive petrol is. Yeah. What are you guys drinking? What are you drinking, Lachlan?
I'm back on the gin and tonics tonight. So I have a Scottish gin, the Botanist, which is rather nice. So it's my drink of choice for this evening.
Very nice. How about you, Ruben?
White Russian for me.
Oh, White Russian. I haven't had one of them in ages.
on the Caucasians.
Ruben brought me on to White Russians a few years ago after watching Big Lebowski. I think we decided to drink
Absolutely.
those a lot. And anyway, it was my daughter's birthday after I started getting a taste for those. And it was a lunchtime birthday party. It was summer because she's born in January. And I had several White Russians and felt a little bit tired. Went down for a nap and I woke up the next morning. I think I slept for like 16 hours straight. So I haven't really had any White Russians since then. I think I had one too many. Anyway.
Yeah. But shout out, great movie, The Big Lebowski. I love that movie.
Yeah.
It is good.
Top 5, 100%.
Yeah, that's classic.
Well, speaking of things that are good, this season we are reading through Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I'm a big fan of this book. I've read this book many times. I took a copy of this with me to Europe when I went there a couple of years ago, and I read a couple of pages while standing in the middle of a Colosseum in Pompeii, and also while in Rome went and found the statue, which I'll put a photo in this in edit, of Marcus Aurelius on his horseback. It was really, really cool. I really, really enjoyed this book. It is a bit of a weird read because it's a journal. So, and you know, a lot of people who specialise in this guy would agree that he would probably be quite surprised and maybe even horrified that people are reading his journal. But it's a really interesting thing because it is a journal. It's very honest. It's very real, very raw, and it's interesting to see this guy's perspective, given he was the most powerful man in the world when he was writing it. So, and if you know Roman history a little bit, a lot of the guys in charge of Rome weren't particularly great people. So, but he was pretty good. So, I'm really looking forward to reading this with you guys. I think both of you haven't read it before. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I've not read it, and I'm purposely just going to read bit by bit while we do the books. I'm not going to get ahead of myself, so we'll see how we go.
Yeah, nice. How about you, Ruben? Have you read it before?
Yeah, no, I've not. So I'm pumped for a bit of Marcus Aurelius.
Nice. So, yeah, it's a weird book. As you read it, there'll be things where there's not really any philosophical value to it. And then there'll be other like nuggets of gold where you'll read a statement or an idea and go, "Ooh, that's an interesting idea," and we'll sort of explore those. We have looked at Epictetus in season 2 of this podcast. Similar sort of Stoic thinking as Epictetus. There's a lot of things in here that are practical philosophy, because it was him using the philosophy in his life and thinking through the problems from the perspective he had and trying to apply the doctrine. So, well, I don't know if doctrine's the right word, but the principles. So, yeah, it's pretty good. So what we'll do is we'll start with a brief introduction on Marcus Aurelius from my copy. I'm reading from the Philosophy Classic series edition. They're the black books with black writing that you can find on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description of the show. And this is just who Marcus Aurelius is according to this book. So, born AD 121 in Rome to Marcus Annius Verus, a praetor, and Dominita Lucilia, a noblewoman and heiress. He was raised by his mother and grandfather after the untimely death of his father, when Marcus was probably around 3 years old. Rome at this time was ruled by Emperor Hadrian. When Hadrian's heir died, he made Marcus's uncle, Antonius Pius, his new heir. Antonius in turn adopted Marcus as his heir. He married Antonius' daughter Faustina in 145. When Antonius died during an illness in 161, Marcus became emperor. He immediately requested permission to appoint his adoptive brother Lucius Verus as co-emperor in a kind of subordinate capacity. After Lucius' death in 169, Marcus was sole ruler. Major episodes in Marcus Aurelius' reign include the war against the Parthian empires in Mesopotamia, which finally ended in 166, and the Marcomannic Wars against Germanic tribes. He also ruled during the Antonine Plague, which was brought back from campaigns and killed millions of Romans. When not involved in military matters, Marcus' time was taken up with hearing legal cases and petitions. He was considered knowledgeable on the law and just in his decisions. Marcus died in 180 in Vindobona, modern-day Vienna, leaving his son Commodus to reign. As emperor, Commodus was considered a disaster, and so Marcus's death is often considered to mark the end of the Pax Romana. When's the last time you guys watched Gladiator?
Been a while.
A couple of years ago, I think, yeah. Because that was the name of Caesar's son in Gladiator, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Commodus?
Yes. So
Yeah.
the old emperor that dies in Gladiator at the start of the movie, that's meant to be Marcus Aurelius. So there's a Hollywood example of that person. I didn't particularly enjoy his representation in that movie. One of the things that I thought was a bit odd is the way he does interact with his son in that movie. He's very gets on his knees and asks for forgiveness, and I don't know. Reading his journal and understanding the Stoics and the history of what sort of guy he was, I feel like they tried to, I don't know, maybe not Jesus-fy, but he felt like it was like watching an earlier version of Dumbledore. Like they tried to make him out to be like this super really nice old wise guy who was just loved everybody and was mega patient with everything, and I don't think that's what he was. I think that he was a very sensible, just ruler, and he had to be a strong ruler to take on the plagues and 2 wars, and I just don't see him kneeling in front of his son, basically crying. I watched that after having learnt what I've learned about him and just go, meh, don't think so. But at least they didn't make him out to be a ratbag or something like that. They still tried to lift him up in some way.
Yeah, and he was like a student of Epictetus's teachings and stuff, and it's unlikely, given the reading that we did on Epictetus, that he'd sort of behave like that, you'd think.
Yes. But, that's Hollywood. They do that a lot. All right. So what we'll do is we'll kick off. So the book is sort of not in chapters, but it's in books. So we'll kick off with book 1, and we'll just start reading through, probably as it's numbered. We'll read that section and then discuss. Unless it's particularly long, which some of them, that does happen. But in part, a lot of these guys, for those who aren't reading along, some of them are even just one sentence for a part. So some of these will just rip through because, as I said at the start, they're not really a philosophical statement. They're just a factual statement or something that's happening at the time. So, yeah, we'll go through it. So, book 1.
Yeah, what is this book 1? Is this? To me, it sounds like he's listing people in his life that he's grateful for and what they've given him. Is that what this whole book is? This first one?
That's kind of how I read it.
Yeah. Which I think
we'll read 1 through to 5, and then discuss what it feels like flavour wise, and then. But you're pretty much right. It starts off that way, but from memory, there's some gold even in book 1. So we'll kick it off.
I just think it's even from a journal perspective. I can't imagine just sitting down and then just listing the people in your life and what they've given you. It's probably a pretty healthy exercise. I'm wondering how it came about in reality.
It's interesting actually that you say that before we read. Like, as you guys know, I've got it's just on my right here. I'll put it on the screen at some point. I've got like a pyramid of the hierarchy for me of like things that matter, and then I've also got like a spreadsheet, I guess you'd call it. It's a table
Yeah.
where it's
A
got
spreadsheet, Tim?
those things.
Really?
I know. I'm the spreadsheet wizard. And so it basically says like who or what it is, what its goal or purpose is, and how do I achieve that purpose with those things. Which is similar to this. It's not the same, but like for example, I've got on there my parents, and so the goal is to honour and love them as my parents, and as my children's grandparents. And the way I do that is through regular catch-ups, occasional holidays, ensure phone calls and conversations happen regularly, and play card games with them because that's what they like. So that's on my wall. Like that's a reminder of how I achieve my goals with my parents for myself. I know that's weird. I know not a lot of people have done this, but I'm a deep thinker and I think these things through. So I feel like it's a similar sort of thing. And I came about doing this as a result of reading this and other Stoic writings at the time. So it probably did influence me to do that, to be honest, now that I think about it.
Yeah, I think it's become a relatively sort of modern thing too for people to journal about what they're thankful for as well.
Yeah, gratitude.
Yeah. Just it's a good way to kind of ground yourself a little bit and think about what's important. So yeah, it's funny that's become kind of a thing. And then once again, here we go, going back to some classics that have been written a long time ago. And
Well, let's get on my soapbox for a minute. I think with how precious everyone in the world's becoming, we need some stoicism in the world, man. We need people to learn how to not let words hurt our feelings and move forward with some intent and some confidence that we're going to be okay. And so, hopefully this helps someone as we go through this. All right, so book 1, we'll do 1 to 5. So, from my grandfather, Verus, I learned good morals and freedom from anger. 2. From the reputation and memory of my father, modesty and a manly character. 3. From my mother, piety and kindness and abstinence, not only from evil deeds, but even from evil thoughts, and further simplicity in my way of living, far removed from the habits of the rich. 4. From my great-grandfather, not to have frequented public schools, and to have had good teachers at home, and to know that on such things a man should spend liberally. And 5. From my tutor, to be neither of the green nor of the blue party at the games in the circus, nor a partisan either of the Parmularius, or the Scutarius at the gladiators' fights. I also learned endurance of labour from him, and to have few wants, and to work with my own hands, and not to meddle with other people's affairs, and to be unwilling to listen to slander. So, I was wrong. There is some philosophical things there straight away. I just didn't remember them being there. So straight away, the first thing that he learnt from the grandfather Verus, good morals and freedom from anger. Excellent, excellent things from the reputation and memory of the father, modesty and a manly character. Isn't that interesting? So his father died when he was 3, and just from the reputation and memory of his father, which he would have got from others, modesty and a manly character. That's interesting.
Yeah.
From his mother, piety, kindness, and abstinence, not only from evil deeds but evil thoughts, and a simple way of living, removed from the habits of the rich. So
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, what was his background? Did he come from a wealthy family, or were they a bit more grounded? Do you know?
I would say they were well connected,
Yeah.
given the fact that he was adopted into this essential inheritance of becoming the emperor at some point in time. But like, I don't think they're peasants, but
yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to look that up though, mate. I'm not 100% sure exactly where he came from in regards to wealth.
No, but I mean, look, it's interesting too because that kind of like mirrors some of that Stoic thinking with that Socratic way as well. That really not focused on the trappings and focus more on the philosophy, so to speak. So
yeah, and focus on the buffet. Five's interesting to be neither of the green or the blue party at the games. I remember us discussing that in Epictetus and thinking that through from. I recall watching a rugby league game not long after we went through Epictetus, and I didn't go for either side. And so that was actually a really fun match to watch because I didn't care who won. But both teams were skilled, and it was really exciting to sort of see a game where I had no investment in who won. And because generally when I watch sports, I'm watching a team that I go for.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah. So look, let's summarize. Like, what are the Stoic principles we've got there? We've got good morals, freedom from anger, modesty, manly character. Would that be a Stoic principle, do you think?
Well, it might sort of lend itself towards some of those characters. If you remember Epictetus talking about, not to be, crying, and carrying on and stuff like that over small things. So it might be referring to things like that.
You can see kind of that idea of detachment, like that whole thing about not becoming of the green or the blue, so on and so forth. That's sort of that Stoic idea of detachment.
Yep.
That's probably not the right word.
It kind of is. Indifference? Would
Yeah.
that be a better word?
Maybe.
Or?
Yeah,
Maybe it's also openness. So it's almost like if you think about it, it's debate, and it's like being open and just like listening to both sides without having a bias or something like that, maybe.
I'm still thinking about this. Like what he's doing here is obviously leaning heavily on those that have gone before him. Like there's inherent in that like a real reverence for the past.
Yeah.
Like I think, which is interesting and important, and probably something that's missing generally from our culture. But also, I also catch myself wondering, like, if people actually sat down and did what he's doing now, and thinking back, these people in my life, what have I learnt from them, and things like that. It seems like a healthy thing, but it also makes me wonder how many people would not be able to complete this task.
For sure. Because they haven't thought about the people who've,
or maybe they haven't really had anyone that, because obviously he's even up in 0.5, he's sort of gained a great deal of wisdom and wealth from the people that went before him, but that may not be the case for a lot of people.
Yeah,
that's a really good point. And so where would that source come from? So what I've got in mind when I ask that question is, recently we spoke about episode 2 ago that Last Airbender thing came out on live action on Netflix, and I'm a member of a few groups on social media for that show, and there's plenty of people on there who watched that show as a kid, and like they feel like this real connection and respect with the Uncle Iroh character in that, and they see him, how he's perceived now as a live action, and they love it because they love that character. But I've seen people that say like that the lessons that Uncle Iroh gave in that TV show are lessons that they've carried into adulthood as children, and so like where would they pull it from if they're not going to pull it from their grandfather and their mother? you know, in our current culture, I'm sure there's people that would, like, I know one of the guys that influenced me, Jordan Peterson. Love that guy. I've only met him once in my life for 30 seconds. He wouldn't recognise me for a bar of soap on the street. But he's a big influence on my life. And so I think, is that going to be more common now? If we did get 10 people to do this exercise, how many of them would be able to refer to parents, grandparents instilling all of these good principles and virtues and practices into their life, or would they quote external sources? What do you think's more likely, Ruben?
I don't know. It'd vary a lot from person to person, but I think you're probably onto something there about people getting those kinds of ideas from other sources, like even pop culture, particularly with I think if you come from a religious background, you're more likely to have those kinds of sources. But just trying to think, if you're somebody who's not grown up with that, where do you get those ideas from? I mean, you probably do get them from pop culture and stuff. But I was also, as you were talking, was thinking where you can get these ideas and stuff is reading, like from books. There is a certain sense that if you really appreciate certain authors and you read a lot of their books, it's almost like that person becomes a friend or an associate of yours, because you've read so much of what they've written, and you kind of get inside their way of thinking, and it does affect the way that you think, which is, I think, one of the beautiful things about reading. But I suppose you could probably get similar influences through watching and listening and all sorts of things. I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
I think sometimes too, you can get a really good mentor in your workplace. It doesn't happen for everybody, or it's certainly at every workplace. I've been lucky enough to have had, a couple of really good mentors personally at different places I've worked over the years. They've taught me stuff that's not just been about the business, but have been, I suppose, like principles and things I could do for myself as well as the business, if you know what I mean. So I think that's definitely a place people would get it. But I think, Tim, you're definitely right that you would have a lot of people who'd pick stuff up from the social media now, particularly I think the younger generation.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because there's a lot of talk about like, if you sort of hear the things that, like, Jonathan Haidt's research and things like that, where there's real concern about the impact that social media is having on young people. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily good lessons that they're picking up.
No. Most of because most of the impacts seem to be negative, but that just might be what's being recorded. I don't know. But
yeah, it's hard to know. Like, bad news captures headlines, right? That's always been the case with traditional media and newspapers, so it's probably the same with social media. Yeah, not sure. So, I don't know. What's the call to action there? The call to action would be, how do we make sure that people we care about can reflect and have, those reference points? How do we be that for someone else? Like, how do we become, what's it, grandfather virus? That could be a good question to ask.
Maybe, but I think what he's doing here is probably a good exercise in general, to just sort of take stock and think about, what the people have gone before you have given you. I think that's probably a good thing.
Or the lessons they've tried to impart that maybe you need to remember, because maybe you've forgotten about them, or pass them over, and just going through this exercise will help kind of bring that back to light. So you might be thinking about it now from something that happened 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And, it could have been something your uncle or your grandfather or somebody was trying to sort of impart this lesson onto you, and it's only now that it might sort of click, because that sometimes happens. something might be too fresh to learn the lesson, and sometimes you've got to come back to it sometime later on. So I think you're right. It's a really good idea to have a crack at it. And
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether I'm going to sit down and start a journal or anything, but I'm probably going to give it a bit of thought at least.
Yep. Maybe we could do that as an exercise, as our homework, the three of us, and compare notes next episode. Or even, maybe not directly compare notes, but just share, one or two things that we realise as a result of doing it.
I like that idea. I just can't commit to it for time reasons, but...
Look, given it's been, gosh, how many months since we did the last episode? Look, I'm bound to get sick yet again. So you'll have time. No, hopefully I don't.
Well, we should apologise because two of us are sort of struggling through a bit of lurgy tonight. So
yeah, I sound like I need to give up the winnies, and not sure.
Yeah, Lachlan doesn't sound much better.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a good voice for TV. No. All right. So let's continue. We'll move on to 6 and 7. So I'll read that. So, and apologies for any names I mispronounce. From Diognetus, not to busy myself with trivial things, and not to give credit to what was said by miracle workers and charlatans about incantations and the exorcism of demons and such things, and not to breed quails for fighting, nor to give myself up passionately to such things, and to enjoy freedom of speech, and to have become intimate with philosophy, and to attend the lectures, first of Bacchius, then of Tendasus and Marcianus, and to have written dialogues in my youth, and to have desired a plank bed with an animal skin cover, and whatever else of the kind belongs to the Grecian discipline. And in 7, from Rusticus I received the impression that my character required improvement and therapy, and from him I learned not to be led astray into the emulation of sophists, nor to write on speculative matters, nor to deliver little moralizing speeches, nor to showing off as a man who practices much discipline, or to perform benevolent acts in order to make a display, and to abstain from rhetoric and poetry and fine writing, and not to walk about in the house in my ceremonial attire, nor to do other things of the kind, and to write my letters with simplicity, like the letter which Rusticus wrote from Sinuessa to my mother, and with respect to those who have offended me by words or done me wrong, to be easily disposed to be pacified and reconciled, as soon as they have shown a readiness to be reconciled, and to read carefully, and not to be satisfied with a superficial understanding of a book, nor hastily to give my assent to those who talk overmuch. And I am indebted to him for being acquainted with the discourses of Epictetus, which he communicated to me out of his own collection. So again, more gratitude there.
There's that mention of Epictetus, huh?
Epictetus.
Well, you can tell, right, from the lessons he's learned from that guy, because it is all like classic Stoicism stuff, right?
Yeah.
Question. How can a guy be humble whose name is Epictetus?
Yeah.
No, it's a joke. That's a pretty cool name, though. Epictetus.
He's the son of Megatitus. So,
the sophists are Decepticons. Yeah, okay. So look, let's work through that. So don't busy yourself with trivial things. That's interesting. I often busy myself with trivial things. I build Lego. I do like little models. I do drawings. I play Xbox. I play games on my phone.
Me too.
I was thinking very recently, what would happen if I gave up gaming? Like, how would I use that time if I just completely gave it away? What would I do instead? And I'm not sure that my go to would be significantly better. I think I would just find other ways to procrastinate. What do you guys think? If let's start with you, Lachlan. If you gave up gaming,
Yeah.
would you learn another language, or would you simply do something else that's equally as useless?
I'd just be looking at more cars online. Yeah, like I'm not even going to pretend I'm going to do something sophisticated or meaningful. Yeah, look, I think I would certainly aspire to those lofty heights to do something meaningful, and then would likely do the same thing because I don't know. It's that procrastination is it's a hard thing sometimes to find. It's not even procrastination sometimes because it is just what they call them, trifling things or trivialities. Yeah, it's just time fillers that you could definitely do other more meaningful stuff with, but I don't know. There must be something that triggers in the mind that gives you that you know relaxation or something from doing something kind of a bit mindless. I mean, that's probably why everybody's death scrolling on their phones through all the social media, right?
Yeah.
It's that put your brain in park and just kind of cruise through something. Yeah.
How about you, Ruben? What would happen if you gave up gaming?
Well, sort of have, to be honest. Just in the last probably couple of weeks, maybe months now. And I've been trying to replace that time with exercise and reading.
Good man.
But what do you call it? The bad news is I don't feel that much better for it. But no, but I honestly have found recently that video games to me just kind of a lot of the time feel like a waste of time. Like it doesn't feel like time well spent to me. So I don't know why what has changed and why I feel that way recently, and that might go away in a couple of weeks and I might forget about it. But just recently, I mean, like at the moment I'm reading about there's three books I'm reading at once. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to sink my time into, hoping that it's a better investment of time. But I don't know, we'll see.
I kind of feel a bit the same way on the on games too lately, Rubes. But I think it's also maybe because the style of game that I like playing, there's not as much of that sort of thing these days. Maybe it's a less popular genre. I like stuff that's very heavily sort of story based, like single player story, not online, not necessarily a shooter sort of thing. So,
well, it's weird even for me lately. Is I'll switch on a TV show, and I kind of get annoyed that I can't watch it in like 1.5 speed.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of the stuff I watch now, I skip scenes because I'm just like, get to the point. So I don't know whether like scrolling has broken my brain. I'm too impatient now. But generally speaking, I find watching a TV show is just like hurry up, get to the point. Like,
Can I ask, do you do the same when you're reading? Do you skip sentences and paragraphs in a book?
no, I don't.
Then I don't think your brain's broken. I think the content's just probably not what you're
Probably
looking
not
for.
that good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know. As you guys know, I have 10,000 million hobbies, and so if I stop one, something else just immediately goes into its place. But for me, like, I've been gaming a lot less, and I'm making sure the games I play now have a secondary purpose. So that secondary purpose can be socializing with my friends, or it's actually a game that my children want to play with me, and so it's a way that I play with them, or it's a game where I'm learning at the same time, or it inspires me to learn more. So, like for me, like Assassin's Creed's very good at that. It has a lot of history built into it, and it also inspires me to go and find out more about that time period and the main characters that are in that particular game and how they fit into history. And so that's kind of how I've probably unconsciously been looking at it for at least 3 years, I'd reckon, of gaming. Is I've reduced the amount of time I play, and I'm very clear on why I'm playing when I play now, as opposed to just mindlessly playing. And it shows. Like, I used to spend 30 to 40 hours a week on games, and now I would spend 4, maybe 5 hours a week on games. So it's definitely reduced, and what I've done with that other spare time has been more learning and playing my guitar and doing those other things I like to do. So
So now
Yeah.
the next thing we all need to do is give up quail fights.
damn, I was just getting good at that.
And who knew you could even get quails to fight?
I had no idea. I thought they
Well,
were like,
mine are masters in the style of quail kwando, but I'll just have to cook them now. I'll get out one of my Italian recipes.
Is that a new character in Kung Fu Panda or something?
Oh yeah, could be, quail kwando.
I think more to the point though he's suggesting is don't be excited by such sports. So I don't really know what he's talking about, what kind of sports. I guess, making animals fight each other is not cool in his mind, which, fair enough.
Do you think it's because they haven't got any consciousness, so it's just two animals doing stupid things until one of them's left standing?
Well, it might be like a gambling thing too. Like, I think those are the kinds of sports you would only watch.
You're right. I reckon you're right, because he does sort of talk about still going to, what was it, like the Colosseum or whatever, and like watching the gladiators.
But don't take a side. Yeah.
Yeah. So he doesn't seem to have a problem with seeing some blood sport, but maybe it's because you might be onto something, Rubes. Maybe it's a gambling thing.
Yeah, it could be.
Now, it's also got in there, don't give credit to what is said by miracle workers and charlatans about incantations and the exorcism of demons and such things. So that straight away makes me think of 300, when the king gets annoyed at the holy men at the top of the mountain for not wanting to declare war. I don't know why, but that's just what I think of straight away.
Yeah.
There's one thing that's so slight there, it's so small, but it really points to why he was a good emperor, which is, and to endure freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Like, it's very, very small. 6 words.
Yeah, mine, I think my translation says it differently.
What does yours say?
Tolerate plain speaking.
There you go.
Yeah, I had the similar to you, Tim. Yeah, endure freedom of speech.
And then followed by, and to have become intimate with philosophy, and attend lectures, and have written dialogues, and to desire a plank bed with an animal skin cover. I've never slept on a plank bed with an animal skin cover, as far as I'm aware. Hang on, maybe I have. I've slept on plenty of floors on a rug.
There you go.
And some of those floors are timber, and I love sleeping on a timber floor with a rug. So there you go, tick.
It's usually after a couple of White Russians, though, but
Yeah, that's true.
But you're right. It's interesting that that's kind of snuck in there. I suspect that's part of the whole Stoic thing of, like, don't be afraid of what other people think. Like, why? What's the point of telling people to shut up? If you disagree with them, you disagree with them. Like, your ideas can't hurt you, kind of thing. Like,
but isn't that interesting for an emperor of Rome to have that mindset?
Yeah, when he probably, you would assume, had the facility to shut anyone up if he really wanted to.
Correct. Like, immediately could just go, don't like what you said, you now get to die.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Pretty interesting. All right. Now, from Rusticus, or Rusticars, could we call it? That's the Aussie translation. Rusticars, Holden. From Rusticus, I received the impression, so that's another hint of Epictetus, received the impression that my character required improvement and therapy.
Yeah, I had improvement and discipline in my copy, but...
Interesting. So that's feedback he's taken from Rusticus. He's accepted the impression Rusticus had of his character. So, again, interesting that an emperor is willing to hear someone say, your character needs improvement.
Well, I mean, if you think about this stuff though, too, it may well be people that have influenced him through his life, and so it may have been in the lead up before his.
True.
Yeah.
But
and
as
so this-
emperor, reflecting on that lesson.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's funny because, like, obviously at the end of this, he's sort of talking about the, the sharing of the learnings from Epictetus, and you can tell because this whole sort of couple of paragraphs has got a real Epictetus kind of flavour to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how he sledges sophists. I always enjoy a good sophist sledge.
Absolutely.
From him I learned not to be led astray into the emulation of sophists, nor to write on speculative matters, nor to deliver little moralizing speeches or showing off as a man who practices such discipline.
Yeah. But also, like, he goes on to sort of say about abstaining from rhetoric, poetry, and fine writing.
Yeah.
So he's right on board with the Socratic slamming the poets again.
Yeah, those silly poets.
Yeah, but it's like that whole paragraph. You kind of get a theme where he's basically saying, just like, speak plainly, don't muck around with your pretty language. Just say what you mean, and let people say what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, and don't put on like airs and graces. I don't know, and like I think that's where he's talking about the poetry as well. Like, let's not get flowery about it. Just say it without all the, pomp and ceremony, and just get to the point.
And yeah, I like when he talks against giving little moral sermons and things like that. Like, it's good. It's almost refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like this next one. Not to walk about the house in my ceremonial attire.
Yeah.
Well,
if you
again,
think about
I think of The Incredibles, and I just hear him walk around his house going, "Where's my super suit?"
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that, but yeah, he's not going to be standing in front of the mirror going, "Look at these purple robes."
Yeah, but I think like plenty of emperors probably would have done back in those days, right?
Yeah.
They'd be wandering around like, is it sort of like, it's like the clothes that fit the role. You know what I mean? Some people like, I know if you remember, like during COVID, sometimes, you'd be looking at people you're in meetings with, and they're at home, and they're still like dressed up for a business meeting, right?
Yep.
Because for some people, they need to sort of get themselves, I don't know if it's in the mood or whatever it is, but it's like they're sort of preparing to play this part. And so they've got to like dress up to sort of play the part, if you know what I mean.
That's an interesting way of describing that, of playing the part.
Yeah. So I wonder if it's kind of like, well, don't play it, live it. You don't need to put the outfit on. You're the emperor. Just live these rules, and you don't have to worry about sort of like pretending to kind of get on with it. I don't know. Maybe I've got that wrong.
Maybe it's even more of just like, you're not that special.
Yeah.
Just dress normally, you idiot. Don't let your ego get out of control.
You're definitely right that he is trying to sort of rein in ego. Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it for sure.
And then, interesting a bit further, with respect to those who have offended me by words or done me wrong, to be easily disposed, to be pacified and reconciled as soon as they have shown a readiness to be reconciled. That's a peacemaker.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I deeply appreciate and respect that, and I try to live by that myself. I don't have too many what I would call enemies in life, and if I do, I try to reconcile, and I try to let bygones be bygones, as they say. But I think, again, in his position, there would have been plenty of people trying to disagree with him or come at him or challenge him, and again, just that willingness to be intentionally patient and kind, and have that attitude of forgiveness. It's refreshing.
Yeah, and to be the bigger person.
Mm.
Sometimes it takes not everyone's good at apologies, and I think it's easy to dismiss them. And I think it's good value in teaching someone to you should accept it if it feels genuine, even if it's a simple apology. You know what I mean? You still feel slighted and all that sort of thing, to try and find your way to make that peace.
That's a really interesting point, mate. I remember when I first got married, I was a horrible person for apologising well. I would recognise, I've done something wrong, and I would say sorry. But I didn't understand that to say sorry properly, for my wife at least, was to express that my actions caused this for you, which led to you feeling this way. And by saying that out loud, it's then making her feel assured that I understand what I've done and that I'm actually truly sorry, as opposed to, if I don't explain how what I did was hurtful, then perhaps I'm just saying sorry to end the argument. Yep. So by explaining, so when I did this, did it make you feel this way? Yep. Okay, confirmation. I get it. My bad. Sorry. And so that took me quite a while to get the hang of. But she was always willing to sort of take me on the journey until I learned how to do that. And I think that's that attitude right here of just, if they're ready to say sorry, then, as you say, like, they might say it in a bad way, but as soon as you recognise there's a legitimate way that they're trying to say sorry, then move forward with it.
Yeah, and look, everyone makes mistakes too, right?
Yeah.
So if someone's taking the time to acknowledge that, it's good to accept it. I like the approach.
Yeah. The next part, I thought, Ruben, you would probably really appreciate that, of not being satisfied with a superficial understanding of a book.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think, although back then books were a much bigger deal because there was a lot less of them, there's so many books now, there's probably some that don't really deserve a superficial understanding.
Yes. I thought that's good, though. Like, if it's worth reading, it's worth reading properly, I think is what he's saying there.
Yeah, I think he's basically saying take the time to understand. Take the time to understand the argument, so to speak. Yep. Which is similar to what he says earlier on in number 6. But yeah.
Not to hastily give my assent to those who talk over much. That just sounds like sophists again to me.
Yeah.
And then finally, he's indebted to Rusticus for his introduction of Epictetus from his own collection. So, yeah, that's good. Yeah. Well, we've read Epictetus, at least one of them, so I concur. It's good things.
Yeah.
What we might do, guys, is read 8, 9, and 10. Discuss, and then that'll wrap this one, because we're already approaching 53 minutes, amazingly. That's, as I said, there's a lot of gold in this book, but it's different from the dialogues that we've been reading previously. Alright, from Apollonius, I learned freedom of will and undeviating steadiness of purpose, and to look to nothing else, not even for a moment, except to reason, and to always be the same in sharp pains on the occasion of the loss of a child, and in long illness, and to see clearly in a living example that the same man can be both resolute and yielding, and not irritable in giving instruction, and to have had before my eyes a man who clearly considered his experience and his skill in expounding philosophical principles as the least of his merits. And from him I learned how to receive what are considered favours from friends, without being either humbled by them or letting them pass unnoticed. From Sextus, a benevolent disposition, an example of a family governed in a fatherly manner, and the idea of living comfortably to nature, in gravity without affection, and to look carefully after the interests of friends, and to tolerate ignorant persons, and those who form opinions without consideration. He had the power of readily accommodating himself to all, so that conversation with him was more agreeable than any flattery. And at the same time, he was the most highly venerated by those who associated with him, and he had the ability both to discover and organize in an intelligent and methodical way the principles necessary for life. And he never showed anger or any other passion, but was entirely free from passion, and also most affectionate. And he could express approval without noisy display, and he possessed much knowledge without calling attention to it. And from Alexander the grammarian, to refrain from fault finding, and not to correct or reproach those who uttered any barbarous or strange sounding expression or syllogism, but aptly to introduce the very expression which ought to have been used, while replying or giving confirmation or engaging in an inquiry about the topic itself, rather than the word, or by some other tactful means of suggestion. So let's start with Apollonius. Freedom of will and undeviating steadiness of purpose. That sounds great.
Absolutely. Man on a mission.
Is your translation a bit different there, Ruben?
Yeah. Mine is moral freedom and the certainty to ignore the dice of fortune and have
Interesting.
no other perspective, even for a moment, than that of reason alone. So it's very different, but I do think it's saying roughly the same thing.
So basically, be rational, not care about chance.
Yeah, because what did yours say? The singularity of purpose or something like that?
The
Freedom of
undeviating
will
steadiness
and
of purpose.
Yeah, I think it's kind of saying the same thing, but mine's a little bit more poetic, maybe.
I think that's great though. Like, because if you've worked out what your main purpose of life is, and whatever you do needs to sort of like build towards that, and you don't want to get distracted and taken off what you believe and what you want to achieve. That's fantastic. I think that's a great way to look at it. I think it's pretty hard to do in practice,
Oh yeah,
but certainly I think it's like basically like be true to yourself and what you believe and what you want to achieve, and don't get pushed off that pathway by others trying to assert their will over you. You've got the freedom of will to stick to your purpose.
Well, he
yeah,
even mentions to be that way when there's sharp pains, like the loss of a child, which like clearly was more common back then. And I know Marcus Aurelius lost children as well. But that's an interesting point. And obviously, he was still teaching during those times. Not being irritable and giving instruction. I can't imagine not being irritable after the death of a child whilst trying to instruct someone at some point. Like, it takes tremendous self-discipline to behave that way.
For sure.
It's very interesting. What do you make of a man can be both resolute and yielding?
Well, I think it's, you've got sort of clear in your mind what you think is right and wrong, maybe, but being open to discourse and dialogue to be convinced otherwise, perhaps.
So a lack of ego attached with a firm moral compass.
Yeah, being clear in your mind, but at the same time, sort of, unbiased and open to discussion, I think.
What do you make of that, Roots? Is that something that speaks to you at all about that's a good thing that a man can be both resolute and yielding?
Yeah, I guess on the surface of it, it does appear to be like contradictory, but I think the way you put it's pretty good. I think that's what it's getting at.
Yeah. Does your translation say it differently?
I'm trying to find. It does. I'm not actually entirely sure which section mine is
So
talking.
straight after the loss of a child, it says, and in long illness, and to see clearly in a living example that the same man can be both resolute and yielding and not irritable in giving instruction.
Just after that bit.
Yeah, it's that. It's like first half of section 8.
Child in lingering sickness, to see clearly in his living example that a man can combine intensity and relaxation.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's very different.
Well, that puts a different spin on it.
Intensity and relaxation. So that's kind of the same thing. That's like an egoless determination.
So being
Like
steadfast, but not like, yeah. So I guess it's almost like being self-assured to the point where you know what you believe, so you relax, even when somebody is perhaps attacking you or putting forth a different idea.
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Like you can imagine someone attacking what you believe in, but you don't shift your beliefs, but you also don't really get angry. You just because you're relaxed in that situation because you have that strength in belief. Maybe I don't know.
Well, Elle's been watching this weird show in Asia of all these fitness guys. It's like the 100 or something like that.
Yeah, someone watched that.
I haven't watched it.
Yeah.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Anyway, there was a clip this afternoon I was watching with the kids, and there was a guy. They were all pulling these like big roller things that look like they're made for some sort of farming tool. And one of the guys, there was 3 of them left, and he's gone to pick up his harness, and it's gotten tangled, and then he's rushed, and it's gone under the roller, and he just lost his focus and got frustrated, and in that frustration just kept making more and more and more mistakes. And as soon as I saw him make the second mistake, I said to the kids, he's done.
He's done.
And they're like, why? And I'm like, because he's lost his focus and now he's emotional. And the intensity was still there, the same as the other guys, but the emotion kicked in and he lost his ability to control his actions and his body and his judgments, and he just made mistake after mistake and lost, and he was eliminated that round. And I could see it as soon as he made the second mistake. I saw the mental discipline had broken, and I'm like, he's done. He is done. And they're like, no, you can come back. I'm like, he is done. He's just beaten himself. Right? And then he did. And so I think that's what this is getting at. The other 2 competitors had a very high level of intensity for the activity, but were very calm while they were doing it, and that's why they were able to succeed. But the other guy who got emotional and it got to him, the intensity was there, but he couldn't move forward.
He had become peevish.
Word of the day on Sesame Street. Peevish. Brought to you by the letter P. Yes. Cool. Have we got anything else from Apollonius?
There was just a bit about the favors, being able
Yeah.
to accept a favor without feeling humbled or letting it pass unnoticed.
That's something I have found hard over the years. Uh, One of my favourite Bible verses is "Blessed is the man who offers hospitality," and I really enjoy having people over and trying to be generous and giving people things. And when I'm at work, I'll take people out and buy them lunch. I'll buy them coffee, and it's taken a long time for me to get comfortable to let someone do that to me. And it's an important lesson, because if you don't allow other people to do it for you, then you're actually robbing them from the opportunity of being able to be generous themselves. And it took me a long time to understand that. I reckon I was in my late 30s by the time I really understood that. It took quite a while.
Mm.
But you guys, do you think you handle that well? If someone gives you something that you weren't expecting, are you able to just be like, oh, sweet, and accept it? Or do you feel a bit guilty? Or do you feel like awkward? How do you feel about it?
Rubes and I both waiting to see who's going first.
Obviously, you feel awkward about it.
Look, yeah, I think I've been a bit like you, Tim, where it has felt a bit odd, and I'm quite happy the same as you. Like I enjoy having people in my home and being hospitable and being generous with other people. And I think I can be a little bit awkward when somebody gives me something and I'm not always quite sure what to say, and I might come off a bit cool sometimes because, yeah, I don't know, like I'm not meaning to, but I think I am just a little bit awkward sometimes when somebody gives me something. So yeah, I don't think I've gotten over that yet. I'm working on it.
How about you, Rubes?
No, I do. I understand that feeling.
Yeah.
I don't quite know how to tackle it, but I think what he's saying is true, yeah, and what you were saying too is true. You've got to give people the opportunity to be generous. I don't know whether I struggle with it as much as you guys by the sounds of it, but
I think I'm fine as if I can not do it in like on the spot in person. That's where I fail, right?
yeah.
If somebody's given me something and I've got a moment where I can sort of like, I'll write them like a note to sort of say thank you or something, or I'll sort of gather my thoughts and I'll try and do it properly. But it's when I get something like that I wasn't expecting and it is a genuine surprise, I get caught a bit off guard and I don't always respond with the way that I would like to.
I also find that there's a temptation there when someone's being generous to think, oh, I don't want them to be generous because then I'll feel obliged to pay them back. You know what I mean? And like that shouldn't really be how it works.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess that's.
There's also a, like for me, for example, if my nephew wants to take me out for dinner or something, because he's like 20 now. I always just want to pay because I'm like, dude, you're 20, you don't earn anywhere near what I earn. You're starting out, just let me pay. Like, let me pay. Your life's hard enough without having to pay for me. But the first time I tried to do that, he really spoke up for it. He's like, no, like I want to do this for you, like as a thank you for everything you do for me. And it's like, okay, it's actually right for me to allow him to do that because then he has an opportunity to become more of a man himself and show some gratitude and honour me in that way. And so then my job is to not let that feed my ego and not think, well, I actually deserve this and now I'm getting the recognition I deserve, or kind of any of those thoughts. It needs to be, okay, I'm going to permit this to happen because it's actually modelling. I've modelled it for him for my whole life of what he should be. If he now wants to show me, hey, this is the sort of man I'm going to be now, and I'm going to respect people who I respect by paying for their meal once a year or whatever, I need to let him do that because I've taught him to be that man. So if I say no, then I'm contradicting the teachings I've been trying to instill in him his whole life. And so I think as long as you accept it with that sort of attitude of humility, and it's not about how great I am, but it's actually this is helping that person be great, then that's kind of how I've learnt to deal with it. But it took me a long time to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Well, I'll take that. All right, Sextus. Sounds like an app on your iPhone. A benevolent disposition. What does that mean? I'm not going to sit here and pretend I understand all these words. I know benevolence is like usually used in a bad way.
No, malevolence is bad. Benevolence is good.
Oh, there you go. See? Yeah. I learned a thing, and I'm sure our listeners did too. So what does that mean, Ruben? A benevolent disposition?
Is kindness and generosity.
Excellent. And the example of a family governed in a fatherly manner, and the idea of living comfortably with nature. I have been told, and I'm sharing this, but I've been told I've got that sort of father figure about me, and it's because of my magnificent beard.
That's why I started growing one, Tim. I'm trying to emulate your...
Well done. Well done. Having the beard is instant +5 to fatherhood skills. But even in my workplaces, when I've had feedback about what sort of leader I am, fatherly gets brought up, which I find strange because most of the people I work with aren't particularly much younger than me.
Yeah.
So I think, does that mean caring and loving and gentle and patient? Is that what you get when you read this?
When I think of someone who's fatherly, it's someone who will, be patient in teaching a lesson, if you know what I mean, and giving like correction and support as you sort of learning and working your way through something. So I think it's a great thing. It's an awesome thing.
Yeah. That's definitely a big part of who I try to be, because I have my own kids, of course. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I try to think about what that looks like. If I were writing my list, like Marcus is here, who's that guy for me? There's a few of them. Those fatherly figures definitely help, as you say, Lachlan, the mentors that you get, if you get good mentors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quite often for them, they've been more of a fatherly sort of identity, I guess you'd call it. So
sure.
Yeah. What do you think about Rubes?
Yeah, I don't think I got too much to say on that.
I think you're a great dad, just quietly. The way that you interact with your youngest child is fantastic to behold. And,
appreciate that, mate.
Look, I definitely would envision the way you do that when I read this.
Good to know.
Yeah. Although you can't make sushi robots like I can.
Yeah, that's an Uncle Timmy game.
Sure is. Tolerating ignorant persons and looking after the interests of friends.
Mine is tolerance for both ordinary people and the emptily opinionated.
Yeah.
Emptily opinionated?
I didn't know emptily was a word.
That's fantastic.
Great one.
Emptily. Yeah. What does your translation say, Lachlan? Is it emptily?
No, I've got tolerate ignorant persons and those who form opinions without consideration.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. I actually think that's an important one, because I'm somebody that suffers from probably a little bit too much ego, and at the same time being overly opinionated, generally speaking, on most things myself. I do find that sometimes when people say things, my instinct is to, uh, go after that argument and start to try to pick it apart or tell people why they're wrong. Which probably not healthy for me, and generally speaking, probably not healthy for others either. So I think there's good advice there. You just got to realize that some people just may not have really thought about it. So when they say something that's offensive or stupid, they may not be stupid. They just might not have really thought about it. They've got an opinion that they're just floating. So there's no point jumping down their throat.
Mm. I think the world needs a lot more of that, particularly when what you see on social media and how people react.
For sure.
Yep.
You mean they're emptily opinionated?
Yes. Actually, can we use that on our next Twitter reply to someone that says something silly? I'll be patient with your emptily opinionated view. And then see if they correct our use of emptily.
I think Lachlan's translation says it better.
Yeah.
Opinions without consideration. Yeah. In other words, I don't think you've really thought or verified your thought process there, or your argument.
Maybe that's what you do when someone says something that you perceive as, not very well informed. Just ask them, like, how strongly do you actually feel about that?
Yeah.
Have you really thought about that?
I'll say fact checked, missing. Yeah. Yeah. We'll get along. What do you think about the not showing any passion, being free from passion but most affectionate? I think I understand what he's saying there. Do you guys get that?
Well, when they're saying passion, do they just mean like overly emotional sort of responses? Like you get, so I think quite often when they talk about passion, it's actually like getting heated. You know what I mean? Like something's really pissing me off, and I'm like getting steamed about it.
Well, my translation says never to give the impression of anger or any other passion. So mine kind of almost uses anger and impressions and passions to mean the same thing. So I think when it says passion, it must be, I'm assuming they're talking about strong feelings, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe an irrational response.
Or an emotional response. I don't know.
But that being attached to being affectionate is interesting. Like, I have a daughter. Sometimes she gets very emotional. And the most compassionate thing I can do for her is to stay very, very unemotional and just offer a hug. And then everything gets better. But if I were to engage or put the impression forward of passion or emotion, it would just add more fuel to the fire, so to speak. So I think that's what they're saying, is like to be that sort of lighthouse or rock where you're very calm and stable, but still gentle and bringing, as I said, bring them in for the hug or the reassurance in that calmness. So
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's what it's putting forward there. I don't know. Having a teenage daughter is really teaching me how to be that.
I think it's like being stoic, but at the same time still having like a bit of empathy. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think you nailed it, Tim.
Cool. And the last one is expressing approval without noisy displays and having a lot of knowledge without calling attention to it. So again, it's that lack of ego.
Yeah.
So, all right. And we're up to the last part, and then we'll wrap it up. So from Alexander the Grammarian, to refrain from fault finding and to not correct or reproach those who uttered any barbarous or strange sounding expression or syllogism Is that solecism or syllogism? I don't know how to say that.
Syllogism? Syllogism?
I don't know.
Mine says vocabulary, syntax, or pronunciation.
Oh, pronunciation. I used to say pronunciation until my grandmother, who is now in her late 90s, said it's pronunciation. I can't remember how many years ago it was. Oh, it was so long ago. I don't remember how old I was, but I remember her just saying it's pronunciation.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, really?
Did you say you're pronouncing it wrong?
No, I listened because she's very smart, my grandmother. Yes. So basically, they're saying don't pick on the grammar. Don't be a grammar Nazi. Engage with the principle or the idea behind the argument, not the spelling or phrasing of the argument itself.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So don't pick on them about saying pronunciation.
You know what? In a pre-internet age, that is something that is very useful for the now.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. No grammar police.
Well, it's pretty
Isn't
funny.
It interesting that it's from a grammarian as well.
Yeah. Well, but it's quite funny though, because you will see something and it'll be on like Twitter or wherever, right? And someone will put forward some idea, and instead of attacking the idea, people will attack the grammar. Because maybe they can't attack the idea, so they'll just be a jerk about the grammar.
Yep.
I think you'll find that apostrophe should have gone after the S. You know, like...
Yeah, correct. I think it's just don't strawman your opponent is what the principle is there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, let's stop there. That's a good way into book one. I think we can probably get through the rest of book one on our next episode. We'll see how we go. But yeah, after one episode, look, plenty of gold in this book. I've read it. Oh, it'd have to be at least 5 times I've read this thing, and even tonight I'm finding things in there I didn't realise were there. Obviously through discussing it with you guys, it brings out more value. For those listening at home, we hope you got a lot of value out of this. I think it's one of the... it's obviously one of the greatest philosophical books of all time, which is why it's still around and it's on everyone's short list. I think we'll skip the pub philosophers tonight. We'll resume that next week. We had a bit of a sort of pseudo pub at the start when we talked about what's been going on. So if you guys are happy with that, we'll wrap it up there. All good?
Yeah, good. Okay. Next week.
Yeah, beautiful. All right. Look, everyone, thank you for listening. We are sorry for the delay. My poor health and many other things have caused that, but we are back and ready to go. And keep an eye out for our other episodes that we will be doing on Timaeus. The couple of those should be up by the time this goes up. We were going to do that as season 4, but as you'll find out when you listen to it, we decided not to. We're going to treat it as a standalone thing and just chip away at it over this year. So, but meditations, it's very dear to my heart, and I hope you guys, along with Ruben and Lachlan, really enjoy working your way through it. So remember, the Republic wasn't built in a day, and neither are middle-aged men, and neither was this journal. So we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for listening.
See you boys.
Bye.